Excellent. Hey, Marco, thanks a lot for that.
Ja, gerne.
I think there are a couple of things that I really would like to elaborate on, because at the
Mhm.
moment the signals in the market are totally different. So, um, there's the dooms. There are the doomsday predictors who say, well, it will be minus 22, like what's his name, Marco Penn, yeah, and
Oh,
then
Malcolm.
Gartner
Well,
has predicted about minus 10 or minus 11% for the global market. So they expect actually a rebound of the memory and the logic, the high-end logic business. So the leading edge piece. I think it's more at the moment the, let's say, digestion of the inventory that has been poured into the market over the last 2 years, that customers still have a lot of orders and a lot of potential. So I just recently
mhm.
attended a conference where somebody from ZVI said, you can't
Aha.
imagine what's going on in the German industry with regards to digitalization of every little factory, every office building, every manufacturing building with IoT and smartness and what you have. These are investments that are currently unstoppable. The digitalization is really going on like hell,
Mhm.
and that is a good basis for, I would say, a healthy industrial business, which is mainly distribution. But in general, I think we are looking at a market that is, I would say, torn apart between politics on the one side, the giant investments that are necessary on the other side, and then the looming question that everyone,
Mhm.
let's say, everyone
Mhm.
knows, but nobody can answer properly. So on the one side, we have political intervention, we have
Mhm.
overinvestment in the business, we have, um, let's say, I would say, healthy opportunities for the next 10 years for a good semiconductor business if everything would be built and implemented on the application side. So I'm still waiting for a lot of IoT market coming to fruition. But on the other hand, we have this looming question about sustainability. Sustainability is, for the electronics industry, is never a topic uh, except in marketing, and all of a sudden everyone is looking at the carbon footprint, but it goes much further. So we are in a situation where this old, I'd say, image of a clean industry is completely thrown overboard. So if you
Mhm.
think of
Mhm.
PFAS, and if you
Mhm.
think of all the conflict minerals and REACH, so substances of very high concern, the electronics industry is using almost everything that is on somebody's watch list for
Mhm. That's true.
environmental damage. It's
Mhm.
crazy, and so far we haven't really found an answer. So I'm curious how our industry will try to square this circle, which is rather difficult.
Yeah, but I think there's, for example, I know in Germany a company, Intelligent Fluids. So they make, for example, for the semiconductor industry, like compostable, materials, which is
Okay.
replacing very dangerous and poisoned materials. So there is some technology which is also helping with this. Of course, we still use a lot of plastics and others, epoxy and you name it. I think this will be not so easily replaced. But I think in general, if you look in the industry and what you mentioned about Industrial 4.0, I believe that the growth rate, I'm not one of the pessimists, I'm really more optimistic about this. And I know Malcolm, I see Malcolm, by the way, on Friday. He's with me in Xiamen. He's also presenting, at least he's on the
Okay.
list. There's a big event. And I know that he is known for his pessimistic view. I know Gartner is very optimistic. So for me, it's normally you're kind of in the middle, Gartner, McKinsey, because I know the big driver down is memory. Let's face it, it's
Sure.
memory. So if you take memory out, it's a different story. Then I'm with
And
you. There's a lot of other
but
areas.
everyone, including Marcom, are talking about the chip market. I hate this term because it's so unprecise, right? The chip market, which potato chips. That is exactly what
It's more
was
probabilistic. It's more
it's
simple for the housewife and the houseman to understand.
I understand that, but it also leads to a lot of misconception and eventually also to overboarding panic in certain cases. So, for example, I think if people would understand the mechanisms of the market better, they would plan better, and none of this panic over the last 2 years would have occurred, at least not in that dynamic, in that severity.
Yeah, but again, if you think about memory, is a big part of this of the semiconductor. It's 20 to 30%, depending on where the price level is. So
True.
they are kind of dictating, because if you look at logic, I think logic might be pretty strong the next few years because of AI, right? Because if you look at the pricing, the average price of this, even if it's smaller volume, and if you look at the demand, and all nations basically want to aim for these new supercomputers, want to use this. I mean, Nvidia, you have seen in one day they raised the market capitalization by or
200
evaluation
billion.
200 billion, 200
Holy
billion
cow.
in one
In
day.
one day.
In one day.
The
So
highest ever.
Jensen is here. So he was. So I saw him yesterday walking literally by, because he was at Computex,
Okay.
and of course he's the star at the Computex. He had the keynote or the opening speech, I think, on Monday. They saw him on the night market, and it's just amazing how he can ride this wave of the AI hype. But to be fair, it's also his products which kind of enable this with the GPUs, right? So I think he
Of
did a
course.
fantastic job to get
Hey,
there.
I have an interesting question, because I realized recently on, I think either it was Gartner or it was WSTS,
Hmm.
the top ranking semiconductor manufacturers slash, yeah, fabless
Hmm.
IP owners. So
Hmm.
I realized that a company is on that top 10 list that hasn't been there before, Apple. Of course, they have a giant demand for semiconductors. They are producing their own product processors, or not producing, but designing, having it produced by TSMC, and all of a sudden they are there with $20 billion of semiconductor revenue. Interesting that this return of the captive market is so let's say, so mind-boggling. It's
Hmm.
not, they will not be the only ones. So Samsung is certainly one of the
Hmm.
biggest captive manufacturers. But you see other companies coming on board. Google with the
Microsoft,
Tensor,
yeah.
maybe
Microsoft also,
Microsoft,
Amazon. Hmm.
Amazon. A
Yeah.
lot of people will make their own server devices, they'll make their own communications chips, just to be less dependent on, let's say, on merchant suppliers like Qualcomm, Broadcom, and the likes. So
And
I
who is
was
the real
wondering,
winner of this? It's the
hmm,
foundries. It's the foundries, the TSMCs, the Samsung, the Intel, the ones who are able to process this. So
exactly,
they have a good business model, because no matter how this market is shifting, one thing is clear, there will be more of this type of production. But let's be clear, the high-end process nodes, only a few companies will be able to afford this, to afford a product design, right? Like Apple
absolutely. So
can, they scale it. Google maybe also can. AWS, I'm not sure if they're going 2 nanometers or whatever, because this we are talking hundreds of million, basically, like for mask sets, for everything. This is very expensive.
no, true. On the other hand, if you own giant server farms that need updates, I think the cost of processors are probably the smallest piece. All right.
Hmm.
And I would
Yeah.
wonder how many servers they have. So how many server processors can fill how many wafers? That's actually the question. So I would argue that Amazon's processor demand could be easily in the range of $1-2 billion per year, and that really
Yes.
justifies any investment in let's say chip design and eventually let's say wafer reservation or whatever. But you see a
Right.
similar trend, or let's say at least the wish in the automotive industry in Europe. So not just Europe, also General Motors has announced that they are securing wafer capacity for their semiconductor needs. So the question is, are they buying, let's say, capacity for products of other suppliers, like, MCUs from the usual STs, Infineons, NXPs, or do they think about their own designs?
But isn't it interesting? So we go the other way around again. So before you had all these specialized companies, and then basically you
Yes.
assemble it and put it together. And now, because of the pandemic and the issue in the supply chain, everybody thinks, no, no, we get it in-house again. But in-house again means more of the already very limited supply of qualified people, engineers, electrical engineers, they are getting sucked up then by all these companies, right? So we have not the endless demand of qualified people. And it's not sexy to
True.
be an electrical engineer because most of the people study computer science and they want to go to a software company. At least the last few years it was like this. People want to do computer science, not electrical
It will
engineering.
actually, it will be worse. I just saw some figures from Germany, German universities last week in a presentation of the German
Uh-huh,
the German Electronics Industry Association. The number of engineering students in electrical engineering and in automation, in manufacturing automation,
uh-huh.
has halved over the last 10 years.
Wow.
And
Wow.
10 years ago, it was already at a very low level. And now assume that everywhere around the world, the baby boomers are going in retirement. All the engineers will be missing. So the last
Yes.
25 years, the industry has really taken the luxury of firing all the old farts, excuse my French, and get rid of cost. And now the governments are talking about prolonging, let's say, work life to 67, even 70. But who is going to hire those guys? Nobody.
Yeah, that's
This
true.
is
That's true.
contradicting.
Yeah, it is. And that's again, that's a challenge because more people going in who is not the core business, right? So also here
Yeah.
in Taiwan, there's a huge discussion also because TSMC and MediaTek are taking away a lot of these electrical engineers, right? When they graduate. So one number, for example, what I heard, I think here in Taiwan, there's probably, I think it's around about 16,000 graduates of electrical engineer, and I think the USA has only 13,000, right? So it was in this range roughly. If you see and you compare this, so you understand that there's already a big mismatch, right? Because USA needed to be much more than that. And even in the semiconductor homeland, in the capital of semiconductor, it is very, very challenging, to feed all these people in, right, in these
Well,
companies.
even worse, if you want to manufacture a fab in Arizona or in Ohio, you don't find enough skilled normal workers to do that stuff, or technicians to run the fab later on, or people who are maintaining the machine park in such a fab. That's the same issue. And you're so right. I was wondering last year already in an anniversary article for a magazine what actually has happened. What has driven the motivation of people of my age or even older to go into electronics? What was the promise that electronics had for you back then? And why doesn't it have a promise anymore? Or why are other promises in other industry or other areas of society stronger? It seemed to me that, for example, in Germany, the promise um, of uh, of lifting um, your personal life of becoming something more important, more valuable, Aufstieg, so
Mhm,
advance at the social ladder, that has gone because an
mhm,
engineer earns less than a media designer maybe when he
mhm,
starts.
mhm,
And also the big things, the big drivers or the big motivators, like, for example, the moon landing, that has been, for my generation, a big highlight, a big enlightenment on what's possible with technology, has also gone.
mhm,
Going to
mhm,
Mars, who cares? Having a
mhm,
smartphone, which is a masterpiece of electronics, of engineering, who cares? Nobody
mhm,
cares anymore about the possibilities that our industry actually provides. And to
mhm,
be honest, with this discussion about climate change, nobody believes anymore that technology will make a positive difference, because in the last
mhm,
50 years, with all the dynamic changes our industry has provided, it has
mhm,
actually gotten worse.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
And we have no solution how to solve, for example, this conflict mineral, PFAS, whatever thing. So the usage of highly critical chemicals and whatever. And think about electronic waste. 55 million tons electronic waste every year around the world. Only 10% recycled, the rest lands somewhere in, I don't know, in a sand dune in Africa.
Right. No,
So
I hear you, right? But if you think about, I would say with artificial intelligence, with the opportunity not only to put somewhere information and search it via Google, make it accessible. So that was also kind of a big thing what Google has helped, with search engines and everything. But now being able to generate content or basically using data which has been created and connecting the dots with machine learning, with AI, and getting a feedback out where maybe it's not 100% perfect, but it's something where humans can interact and identify, let's say, a next step. I believe there's a lot of treasure which we have not really completely digged out because some person maybe knows not a piece of information he should know. And I believe that with AI used in a good way, you would be able to process this and probably also
okay.
can accelerate. I think everybody should use and understand just for very simple stuff how this ChatGPT or how OpenAI, how this works to get a little bit of an understanding what is possible there. And the speed is much faster than Moore's law, 100%.
So we probably will end in a situation where ChatGPT or GPT-4 will have more social intelligence than the people who are running it. Ha, that's funny, but I agree with you. So I'm not halfway as concerned about AI if it is used, let's say, ethically, than
Right.
many other people. But have you seen this announcement of CEOs and people of very high popularity issuing their concern about AI and no standard and yada yada? I think it was on even on the news.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm not sure if they really mean it. I mean, I hope they mean it, right? I think it's definitely you need to have some kind of let's say like a code of conduct. I'm not sure if the governments always can step in there.
I was about to
Um,
say, tell this to an autocrat.
I know. That's why I'm very cautious, right? So I'm
Yeah, yeah,
cautious to say this, but the point is like every technology you can use for good or for bad. Should you not use it then? Hell, you should use it. Of course, you should use it. So
yeah.
I think the positive things, what can happen with this, think about cancer treatment, think about like other disease, where we get stuck, where we are not moving forward, right? All these kind of things. I think this is something where I believe this really has a positive. Of course, I understand there's also a negative side, but it's more the people who are using it. It's not the
Uh,
technology itself.
It's And I think this is hundreds of years old truth. Even Mr. Paracelsus said it was it in the 15th or in the 16th century, that it's really the decision between doing good or bad is what defines people. And why shouldn't it be different with AI? So AI taking over from us is the big concern that a lot of people have, and I'm not sure if this will really be the case. At the end, there's always somebody who's pressing the red or the blue or the green button, and that will make the difference. So I agree with you. And personally, I hope that AI will have its entry into the topic that I'm working on at the moment, digital supply chain, because I think specifically if you look at, let's say, risk analysis at a
Yes.
part number level with uh, AI algorithms looking at the data and drawing their own conclusions on how risky a part could be for a customer, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that is really something that I'm waiting for, for a long time. It has been part of discussions with customers 20 years back. Couldn't you create an early warning system? Well, at that time, no. Today, maybe, and that is really something that could help revolutionize our little business a little bit.
Right, because I think you have the data already. It's not that you miss the data. It's more about
No,
how you process it. A human cannot process it because it's too many data points you need to process. But AI, if you train it, if you have an algorithm, Of course, a human can give them indicators and then basically train it and help to make these automatic decisions. They might not be 100% perfect, but let them be 70% perfect and then later 80. So you can increase the quality of it, and it's definitely better than nothing. So I think that's what people need to understand when they complain and say, "Oh, this is not accurate," and what I get as a feedback is only 90% correct. But okay, so you have 90% of your work already done. So to
Yeah.
earn your money, you should also do the last 10%, right? Because otherwise we don't need you anymore.
Okay. I have a last question, then I let you go because I also need to
Sure.
run. It's about the metaverse. So
Hmm.
AI certainly will be a driver. I'm 100% sure that you'll find AI accelerators on the normal processors, right? So this will be a real driver. Software, AI, parts of AI being everywhere around us, so also then being hardware accelerated and so on. But what about metaverse? I read not probably a year ago or so that metaverse could drive a revenue, a semiconductor revenue of $5 trillion in, I don't know, couple of years, whatever, whenever it will take off. Do you see metaverse coming on strong on your side of the world, or is it still a promise that isn't fulfilled?
I think we have not really seen enough convincing usage cases or like cases how this can be used. I know during COVID, there was this hype, it's your office, you go to the desk and you sit down, it's great with the interaction. But let's put it in this way, since COVID is over, I'm back to 200 days travel again with Skype and with Teams or whatever. It leveled up my communication by phone. I mainly have like calls like with you on a video, but in order to cope with the industry, to see customers, to go around, I cannot replace the personal contact. The conferences also, I think the conferences in many ways also failed to do them online, right? It was a nice gimmick,
Yeah,
but nothing really what was convincing. And if we think about metaverse, I think it lost a little bit the drive, and people maybe were, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. I can be at home, I can be virtual there. And I don't want to be too negative, but I need to see something really convincing, because for me, buying any designer shirts or sneakers online for the same price than offline just to have my avatar equipped with it, I'm sorry, maybe I'm too old for that, but this is not really what is exciting to me for the metaverse. That's kind of a side business. The metaverse in really helping companies is, for me, is like a digital twin, for example, right? So if you have this in
yeah,
factory automation and these kind of things, I see a usage case there, but I've not seen really like full blown application where this is used. I know there's technology out, but not to the span which would justify what you have just mentioned for the revenue, which is like
yeah.
quite high, right, for
So
semiconductor revenue.
let's wait for that promise to come to fruition. Let's stick with the AI and whatever is already in the pipeline in terms of semiconductor drivership. So certainly the electric vehicle business will be
Yes,
something, let's say, very material that we will feel over the next couple of years very strongly.
yes.
And if it's not the Germans, it will be certainly the Chinese who are running over the market with let's say, cost-efficient electric vehicles. Let's see how that works out. So, hey,
Yeah,
Marco, thank you a lot for your time. I hope that you are in
absolutely.
Munich anytime soon, and I can invite you to the beer garden. It would be the ideal weather at the moment, but well, you'll
Actually,
pick
I
the
will
time.
I will be there. I will go back to this. I probably will be in Europe, and in Europe for sure in July. So I will be there in July.
Let me know where you are. I will meet you, and I owe you something. Hey,
All right.
Marco, thanks a lot for your time, and
Thank you.
well, I hope to talk to you soon.
All right. Okay. See you. And come to me and visit me in Taiwan when you are here. Okay.
Absolutely. Konnichiwa. No, no, there's the other one.
Bye
Goodbye.
bye. See you. Okay. Bye bye.